Okay.
Go for it.
So this one is an old story, but we never really discussed it. So Super Smash Brothers, it is a video game. And several weeks back, the community, and I think it kind of been unfolding, had several Me Too type allegations where many of the players were accused of either from on the what you might call the lighter side of being creepy, and then some of them were to the degree of being pedophilic in nature. And
Did anyone
so
get accused of actually having sex with kids?
I don't know. I didn't go deep into
the most aggressive I saw was soliciting nudes.
Yes.
From minors.
Yes.
Still bad. Still bad.
Yes.
But
there was an instance of just straight up sex with like a minor.
Okay.
What was the story there?
It's a really long one, but basically that there was one player that started going to tournaments when he was like, I forget, like 14 or something.
I believe read
And
this
then
one.
yeah, we were talking about it before the podcast like that week. And then there was an older player, I think he was maybe like 18 to like super early 20s, and they had sex.
Is this the one where the 15-year-old like pursues him and aggressively?
Yeah.
So I don't want to get into the specifics of any of these stories because I actually don't think it's important to my point. There was a very prominent player named Zero who the allegations, which he I think initially denied and then said these are true, is that he solicited nudes from a minor. And what I thought was interesting about the whole story is that, of course, the reaction was very vitriolic against him. And we've talked about understanding before. Understanding does not mean excusing, but you then told me later that his story is one of some abuse that he suffered as a young guy. I think you know his story better than I do.
Yeah, this is weeks ago, but from what I remember, he was bullied in school, and I think at one point I don't really understand how this could possibly happen, but a bully like found him in a bathroom stall and molested him basically. And then for the rest of school, I think this was like 9th grade or something, he was like 14. For the rest of school, he started to act very flamboyant because he, in his mind, was like, well, the only way that could have happened is if I was gay, because obviously what didn't happen was I
did push him off me and say, yeah.
Oh, yeah, he just froze. He just froze.
Yeah.
He's a small, chubby guy and just got froze when this big dude was like threatening him. But rather than just say, oh, I was molested by a bully, he was like, oh, I must be gay. And so then he started to act really flamboyant. And then only later is he like, oh, no, I was in fact molested by a bully.
Yeah. Well, the point is not that any of these stories are true or allegations. I'm not interested in that. But what I do believe is the case is that there's this cycle of shame which continues. And I think, unfortunately, the reaction of you monster, pedophile label, you are completely dehumanized, bad person, is totally unhelpful, because even in his thing, which might have been manipulative in nature, he's like, I'm a horrible person, I am all of this awful, which I think misses the point of true atonement. True atonement is about recognizing that you may have done bad things, but that you are not necessarily a bad person. And what that leaves the door open for is for change and for you to make amends in the best way that you possibly could and to be different in the future. But if one accepts, wow, I am a bad person, the cycle of shame continues. Maybe we can lock you up in a cell or a cage or your room forever, but the healing doesn't start to occur. And I think, unfortunately, what happens in a lot of these molestation, sexual young kid things is that something happens, deep shame is felt, it's never discussed, spoken to, or understood within yourself or outside of yourself. And then, as you saw in his case, and I think in the case of many other people, that cycle continues. And I just thought that it was a shame. And I'm sure there were people out there that
Well, we've talked about this, though. You don't have to hate someone to incarcerate them.
Sure.
Like, you can still be like, Ted Bundy, you're doing this because you have a disorder in your brain and you can't help yourself. We're going to give you the death penalty because you have a brain disorder and you can't help yourself.
Yeah.
And like, do I think that you are unworthy of having a soul or some like some weird metaphysical thing? Like, sure, no. I'm gonna put you to death though, because if I release you from jail, you'll murder women and have sex with their dead bodies. That's just what you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't think you have to necessarily say like evil or not evil, but I do think that you can still be in favor of jail. I'm not going to speak to the death penalty, but like punishment, incarceration, prevention, by just saying like, listen, because of trauma you couldn't control or a brain disorder you couldn't control, we don't know how to get you to stop murdering women and raping their dead bodies. So we're going to put you to death.
Yeah.
Like, Seems like the best solution for society.
Totally. And I think, and what I would say is that punishment, prevention, all of those things can be done without the added element of shame. And I include this for the people, the whoever the person was that he was soliciting nudes from, like, not that they have done anything bad, but that person, I'm sure, feels a tremendous amount of shame. And part of what has been good about the Me Too movement is that it's stopping that shame cycle at some point. So like the latest victim is the person that is starting to be able to go, this happened and it does not define me. It does not make me unclean or disgusting or all of these things. I can start to share these things with other people and remain accepted by society. And I think the harder move to make is to go one level back to the person who had something really awful happen to them, couldn't process it, and as a result did something and passed it on to someone in a way that was destructive. And again, that's not to say nobody should go to jail, nobody should be prevented. Like, you can still, to your point, enforce all of those sorts of things without making the leap to evil, monster, dehumanization, which I think is really the root of why these things sort of continue in the world. Does that make sense?
Sure. No, it reminds me, I mean, to some extent, it reminds me of Aaron Hernandez, the NFL player from the New England Patriots. He murdered someone. Then they did a autopsy on his brain after I think he killed himself, and his brain had been destroyed by football to the point where they said anyone with this brain damage would have murdered someone as well, because basically when he got enraged, the part of his brain that would prevent him from committing a murder was just not there. Like, it just got bashed away over the course of his career. And so, okay, this guy has to go to jail because every time he gets mad, or not every time, but he's going to get mad.
If he were still alive.
Yes, he's going to get mad and kill someone again because his brain doesn't have the ability to stop him. So we should incarcerate him. Then he killed himself. And so it's like, yeah, you don't have to think Aaron Hernandez is a bad monster, but you just have to go, well, he has to be put in a position where he's incapable of murder, because when angry, that's what he'll do, because while we all cheered on his sport, he took brain damage.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think you can apply that in some degree. We've talked about this when I got robbed in Brazil by a 15-year-old at gunpoint. It wasn't because that person had who was less angelic or worthy of heaven than me, who's never robbed someone at gunpoint. It's because he was born into a situation where that was how he was going to get his food, was by selling my iPhone. So, like, yeah, you don't have to demonize the person. You can say it's because of the circumstances in which they grew up in, and still be supportive of, like, okay, if this 15-year-old were murdering people and stealing their iPhones, we'd have to put them in jail, because despite the fact that we're sorry for your upbringing, we can't have you in society murdering people to steal their iPhones. You know what I mean? So it's, yeah, you can do it. I mean, almost, I don't want to say coldly, but you can like remove the emotional part and just be like,
yeah,
I'm trying to run a society here that's the best for the people.
Well, we've talked about this before. I want to ask you, because what this leads to me, is a hard determinism. So if we accept that brain damage makes somebody do a behavior, or a tumor makes somebody do something, of course, everybody's brain has structures that are the way that they are. So I'm curious, and you're not a hard determinist.
No, we talked about this. For everyone else that's not me, I go determinist. For myself, I choose to go free will because I find it empowering, which may just be a determined thing. It might be determinist that this is what I'm saying. But for other people, I choose to view them as if their circumstances have created what they're doing, especially when it's negative. And for myself, I go, okay, well, I'm not going to believe that I'm a pool ball that's been hit with a stick and it's just going to go where he's going to go, because I find that it's more beneficial to my headspace to assume I have free will. And also, if I'm wrong, it won't affect anything because all this is predetermined. But if I go determinist, then maybe I unempower myself to try to make hard decisions, or maybe I excuse myself by just going like, oh, like, yeah, I did that bad thing, but what could I do?
But you do recognize the argument does pertain to you as well, which is you have a brain, which is a physical structure.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. Got it. And then you just go, no.
No. No, it's totally a belief. That's why I say it's a belief. It's not
cognitive dissonancy.
Yeah. No, it's a belief. It's not I wouldn't say I have a proof or evidence of it.
Sure.
It's just that it's like a decision I make because I find
it's
kind of like Pascal's wager, which also doesn't hold up.
I understand. So if if someone threatened you, pain of death, and they were going to hurt your loved ones, if you didn't get this right, and of course there's an objective right, let's leave all that for later.
I can't prove free will. Let's put it that way.
If they're like, Ben, Are you an agent that operates on free will or
Yeah.
determinism? Get this wrong, bad things are going to happen. What would you say?
Determinism.
Okay, got it. But for you, you're just like, you know what? I don't need to engage with that.
I just don't find it to be a useful
You
belief.
can just put it into a container and just leave it.
Yeah.
I understand. Got it. Isn't that crazy about humans? I mean, I think it's important to recognize. I actually don't think you're doing the wrong thing because we've talked about this. Honesty over integrity is so important. People, in an attempt to have high integrity, which means to make your words match your beliefs, match your actions, will hide things from themselves so that they are not forced to make difficult actions like leaving the job that they know that they hate but that they're scared to leave, or that the relationship, or going...
Can I make this more concrete?
Yeah.
So, for instance, because for a while I didn't understand this difference. I thought honesty and integrity was like synonymous. If you value integrity over honesty, you will lie to yourself about the quality of your relationship, because if you admit to yourself it is a bad relationship and you think you have high integrity, you will end your relationship. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you will convince yourself it's a good relationship, which is actually even worse.
Yeah.
Because now everyone else can see you're in a shitty relationship, but you can't see it, because the second you let yourself see it, because you're high integrity, you would end the relationship, because that's your value, right?
And emotionally, you can't let
Your
go.
value is I don't allow myself to be in shitty relationships. So if I'm in a relationship that I'm not emotionally ready to end, I'll do mental gymnastics to convince myself it's not a bad relationship.
Yep.
If you are high integrity, but you prioritize honesty and you give yourself permission to not be 100% integrity, you're capable of going, this is a shitty relationship, which for addiction or codependence or fear of loneliness, I'm terrified to end, and I'm gonna stick with it for a little bit because I don't want to rip the Band-Aid off. But I can at least agree with my friends and family and admit to myself, this is a suboptimal relationship. I don't love these certain behaviors, this and that.
Yeah.
Which is helpful, because it's actually, weirdly enough, the only way to make it a good relationship or escape it to a good relationship is if you can be honest about the things you don't like in your partner or your friends.
And
So that's the difference between honesty and integrity. Because I think we've almost made this up. I don't know if this is like officially how people bifurcate the two, but
Well, what I was just saying is you had a good example of that right there, where you admitted to experiencing cognitive dissonance without resolving it.
Yeah.
Which is like, a lot of people be like, I can't do that. Every time I find cognitive dissonance inside of myself, I must make one belief match another. And so what option you could have said, which a lot of people in your position would have done, is say, if I had a gun to your head, would you say that it's free will or determinism? In order to remain without experiencing cognitive dissonance, you would have said, no, I would say it's free will, which is not the truth. You know what I mean?
No, if everyone else in the world, well, there's one option. You're all NPCs and I'm the player character. But besides it being a simulation where I'm the only real person, to think that everyone else is determinist but I'm not would be insane.
Sure.
It'd be better if I thought everyone had free will.
Yes.
Then at least it would be defendable.
And I do actually think, because I don't think that I've gotten to the bottom of the determinism free will. I'm still actually open to having my mind changed. But when we do look at the structure of the brain and what appears to be a physical system that is determined in particular locations with neurons that are defined, it appears that if that is what is driving my behavior, that is operating like a very complicated billiard table that has just been cracked, and now all the balls are going in complicated but predictable ways.
Yeah, I want to get to a different thing that's really the video
sure.
games and my grandma, but real quick, the thing that made me switch to determinism was, I was a huge Tony Robbins fan. Like, I was a zealot at some point. I wanted to study what he was teaching and become like him, and he would use Robin Williams as one of his examples of saying, happiness does not come from the external world, which I agree with, because Robin Williams had more people beloved him than almost anyone. He was rich, he was famous, and then he killed himself. And Tony's takeaway was, that is a lesson about how important it is to monitor our own beliefs. And that's a good lesson. Honestly, we should monitor our own beliefs. Bad evidence for it, because it turns out that Robin Williams had a degenerative brain disease that was basically slowly destroying parts of his brain, such that if I did that to Tony Robbins, he would also eventually kill himself. And that's when I was like, oh shit, this person that I thought was a good lesson in, not being grateful or whatever, couldn't help himself, knew that he didn't want to be like this, wanted to be around for his kids and his fans and this and that, but eventually just his brain betrayed him. You know what I mean? And that's the first time that I kind of was like, oh, there's some determinism to these outcomes. Does that make sense?
Yeah. We don't have to push it too much further.
Unrelated, but
hope that you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to see more like this and have us do more podcasts, we are 100% funded by our generous patrons. And if you'd like to contribute, there's a link in the description, and we'll have one pop up on the screen right here so that we can do more podcasts where we have fun conversations and hopefully some deep ones like this. Either way, hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.